Folks, this is Vicky from patternprincess.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I have a unique project here. I started this Afghan here as a wedding present for a couple back in July, and they've gotten married last weekend, and of course, as you can tell, it's still in my possession. I did not get it done until the day after their wedding. So now I'm going to videotape it and it'll be a little bit late to them, but I think that they'll really enjoy this blanket. It's a nice, very nice large blanket. I've done a double crochet V-stitch. This is a V-stitch throughout, and I'm using 2 strands of yarn. I'm using white. Both of them are Caron 1 pound yarn. Sometimes you get those real big Caron 1 pounds, and sometimes you think, what am I going to do with all that yarn? Well, make a big blanket. So I've used a sky blue, is the blue color in it, and then the white again is just a white color, but the whole thing is worked with 2 strands held together, and it's amazing how different. This is the same color blue, but I think it looks a little bit different when it's crocheted by itself rather than with the white. So, and of course, I've used 2 strands of white, and around the border I have the border that I've shown you how to do, and I'm also going to show you how to do the V-stitch that's worked throughout this Afghan. So quick thing, I'm using a size N hook. I started this off with 130 chains, and all that you need to make it wider or narrower is an even amount of chains, and the pattern will work for you. I used 3 1 pound Caron skeins, excuse me, for the blue part of the blanket here by itself, and then I started with fresh skeins of 2 white and 2 blue for the border. So, and I have the full skeins. It didn't take about 3/4 excuse me, of the white Caron 1 pounds for the border here, but 3/4 of a skein of 2 skeins, and then not even quite half a skein but of 2 skeins, because remember I'm holding the 2 strands together for the blue. But I thought I do have I'll show you a picture on my blog. I'll have the full pattern there, but I'll show you how it looks without the blue on the very end of the border, and then how it looks with it. I kind of like it with it better. I think it brings the whole thing together. Size, it is 79 inches wide and 76 inches long, and it's with the border is about 3 inches, so that's with the border. Okay, and it's about 10 stitches per 4 inches if you're going to look for gauge, but I don't know, the gauge is really important. This, after the 3rd row, it's a 3rd row repeat until we get to the border, and the border is just very simple. It's a single crochet, double crochet, and then I did a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then a double crochet in each one, and then a single crochet. So it's really, I think it has a really nice, unique look that really polishes off this blanket, and it was very easy to do. So I'm going to get going here, and I'm going to do a small swatch. I've done a chain of 12, and again, this is using 2 strands of yarn, and I have some yarn left over, so I'm using that, and I'm using the sky blue and the white, and this is Caron 1 pound. So I've chained 12, so I'm going to yarn over, and then in the 4th chain from the hook, so 1, 2, 3, 4th chain from the hook, I'm going to do 2 double crochets, and that's actually going to start my V-stitch. The 2 double crochets create your V-stitch, and I'll show you how that happens like when we get to the 2nd row. So I have my when I skip those first chains, that does count as a double crochet, and then I've done 2 double crochets in that chain, in the 4th chain, yarn over, we're going to skip 1, and in the next chain we're going to do 2 double crochets. So if you can double crochet and do a chain and do a single crochet, you can do this pattern. It's just a lovely pattern. I will tell you that your arms get a little bit tired because you're working with, this makes this yarn kind of chunky. I just did my 2 double crochets. I'm going to skip 1, and on the next chain I'm going to do 2 more double crochets. So anyways, as I was saying, as you're working with the 2 strands of yarn, I did find that per night I only wanted to do like 2-3 rows, and then my arms were tired enough. It is it's a little bit more difficult on your arms. You get a little bit better workout than if you just had one strand of yarn. Okay, so there's my 2 double crochets in that one. We're going to skip a chain and then do two double crochets, and we're almost to the end of our swatch, and I'll show you how it looks here. Get through both loops, yarn over. And I always make sure, sometimes as you notice, I'm kind of bringing my yarn back a little bit, because as you have your yarn unwound, sometimes you'll have one strand of yarn a little bit looser than the other. So I try and make sure that I have about the same tension. So I do have to kind of adjust that quite often, but it just makes sure that you have a nicer look. You don't have one piece of yarn hanging out there like a big loop. So we skip this one, and in the very last chain, we're just going to do 1 double crochet. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to turn. So here is your first row. So we have really a double crochet on each end, excuse me, and then a 1, 2, 3, 4 V-stitches so far. So now we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then in the middle where we just did those 2 double crochets, we are going to do a double crochet and another double crochet. So now, all right, so there's our first one. I gotta straighten out my yarn again so I don't have it all knotted for you. Yarn over, and then I'm just gonna go to my next center. Oopsies. There we go. And I gotta make sure I get both strands of yarn. And then again, and another double crochet. And I'm not picking, there we go. Gotta make sure we pick up both strands. Okay, and then we have another one, yarn over, and then in between those 2 double crochets, we're going to do 2 more double crochet. So that's creating that V-stitch. But it's just lovely, just a lovely stitch. A lot of times with a V-stitch, you'll have 1 or 2 chains in the middle of it, but this yarn is so chunky that I just thought it would add way too much bulk. And it just, I don't know, I just thought it would be too much bulk for what I'm doing, okay? Let's just put it that way. So we have this, and then in our beginning chain, we're gonna, on the very top stitch here, we're gonna put our hook through and then do a double crochet. All right, now we're gonna roll on to row 3. Okay, I had to unwind a little bit more yarn. So we have 2 rows done already. So this is row 1, and you can see by putting those stitches in the middle here, that really, it has these 2 double crochets spread apart a little bit, and it creates a nice V. And up here you can't really tell, but when I add this 3rd row, and I don't know really why I said a 3rd row repeat, because it's really the 2nd row. So I did a chain 3, and I'm going to go in the between the first 2 double crochets, and I'm going to do 2 double crochets. So the pattern is really easy. It's really mindless. You don't have to really count. Once you get your first row or 2 down, it just continues to go on and on. There was one time I made a mistake in a row before, and it was, of course, the beginning of the other one. What I did is I didn't do 2 double crochet. I only did 1. So when it came time to do the V-stitch, it was like, oh, there's no way to fix this without tearing out 2 rows. So I did. I tore out the 2 rows because it would have just been so obvious to have 1 there. And and I wasn't smart enough to figure out a way to fix it. And so I thought, well, you know, it's all right. See, now here the tension was a little bit different, so I didn't pick it up quite right. So I gotta straighten out my yarn again, and then it'll work. So that was, I think, the biggest thing, is just making sure when you're working through with 2 strands of yarn to make sure that they kind of have the same tension and they're not tangled up. And then we'll put our double crochet in that last stitch, and that will finish off this row. So we have the first 3 done. Isn't that lovely? And then what we'll do, I'll show you as I'm working on the blanket. The blanket is sitting here done, but I have already taped myself as I went around the blanket to show you on the blanket how to do the border on it. But this is how you do the center of the blanket. It's just a lovely, lovely texture, and I can tell you it is extremely warm. It is wonderful and warm on top of you on these cold winter nights when we have like below 0 weather. And I thought, especially for a couple that just got married, it's a nice big blanket. They can either put it on their bed, or you know what, it is long enough and big enough that they can snuggle on the couch together and stay warm. So I hope that they'll enjoy it. I hope that this has inspired you to make a blanket for yourself too. So continue on from where I am at this point here, because then the next part I'm going to show you how to do is the border. So I'm actually working on the blanket that I'm going to be giving as a wedding gift, and I'm working, remember, with my two strands of yarn together, and I'm using, don't forget, an N size hook. So right now I'm adding the border, and I'm doing a single crochet border around the whole edge here, and I'm going to be doing in each stitch around, and then 3 single crochets in each corner. So I'm going to show you how I work it. So I work in this stitch right here. Each stitch gets a single crochet, and this is then the spot here. This is actually the starting row that I had started with when I first started crocheting this blanket. So we're gonna work in that each stitch, single crochet, and it sometimes, because my hook is a little bit thicker here, a little bit bigger, you have to really push it through. Now, instead of trying to get all my stitches in this corner stitch here, I'm actually going to put my 3 single crochets in this one here. So we got 1 and the 3 single crochets. What that's nice about is it actually helps bring this right around the corner really nicely. Then up the side here, I do a single crochet here, and then remember we had the spot on the sides where we'd begin our spot, we'd have our 3 chains. I actually just do a single crochet there. When I started going and putting on my single crochet border, I was just trying to do 2 in here, and I found that it was actually getting the blanket weavy. So I'm just putting on the side 1 single crochet in the stitch right here, and then it's again 1 single crochet where we did those chain 3, and it really helps ease the yarn around, but it gives you a very nice base to do the second row across your work here. And of course, now I have not figured out what my second row is going to be yet, so at least this shows you how I am putting on my single crochet, and I'm going to show you how this looks now. So we have this side here, this is the bottom part here, and I'd actually started all the way over here. Here's my first corner that I did, and then here's the other side that I've done already. So as you can see, it kind of gives it a nice little edge to start working with. Now, have I figured out what I'm going to do for my second row around the border yet? Not a clue, but I know I'm going to probably do it in white. And I actually am thinking that I'm probably going to end up with maybe the blue as maybe a single crochet around everything when I'm completely done. So I'm thinking, I don't know, I will have to see what I figure out is my second row. But don't forget, when you do your single crochet, whether you started your single crochet on the side or started it in a corner, you're going to do a slip stitch into that first single crochet, and then that'll end your first round around the whole big blanket. So I'm going to finish this first row here, and I'll meet you back here at round 2 once I figure out what round 2 might be.